Welcome to the Orthodontic Pearls podcast, where we share tips and tricks to better your clinic, business, and life. Today, we have our honored guest, Jason Harris, as we discuss investment strategies for high-income earners, benefits under the new tax laws, and teaching good saving habits to our kids. And now your hosts of the podcast, Drs. Chris Teeters, Brian Anderson, and Andy Sarpadar.
Welcome back to the Orthodontic Pearls podcast. Our guest today is someone who brings a sharp financial insight and spiritual depth to the conversation. Jason Harris is the founder of the Harris Investment Group, a private equity firm managing hundreds of millions in assets. But he's just as passionate about helping people live intentionally and avoid the wealth traps that can come with success. Jason's been a great friend of the show, a frequent podcast host in his own right, and someone I trust to bring clarity to the complex topics we will be discussing today. Jason, welcome to the show. How we doing, man?
Hey, so good. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you here. Now, you and Brian, I believe, go way back. You both live in Utah. How did you guys first meet up?
How did we first meet, Brian? I think it was through Derek.
Yeah, so we first met up after I joined a DSO, and I was looking at, well, how can I invest my money, and what are different strategies and opportunities? But first of all, I do want to recognize Dr. Brad Chvatal is joining us as a guest co-host today. He's been a guest on the podcast, and he's a close friend and just really a respected great orthodontist. We're happy to have both Brad on as a guest and Jason. But yeah, to finish your question, Andy, Jason and I met after I joined a DSO in 2022, and my cousin, who's a respected corporate attorney here in Salt Lake area, had looked at a bunch of different opportunities, investment opportunities where there were some tax benefits, and looking at safety and looking at rate of return and the tax piece, and kind of looking at the investment overall. Like, okay, well, what's the actual bottom line implication when you consider taxes too? Mm-hmm. And money that if you could save that money in taxes and put that to work for you, how much bigger could that grow? And what are strategies there? So I looked at a bunch of different ones. Ultimately I did several different, but the Harris Investment Group was the one that I put a big chunk of that with. I have no financial incentive, to have Jason on the podcast. They may be a sponsor of the podcast at some point, maybe, who knows? They've been a great sponsor for MOPC. We've loved having Jason and the Harris Investment Group join us at MOPC. They always provide really valuable insight and pearls, and it's not just a promotional pitch. People, when he spoke, and I think people who, even if they decide to do their own thing, they gain insights from the way he suggests to structure things. And so there's no personal financial incentive at this point. Who knows? Maybe we'll work together at some point. We've talked about doing that potentially at some point. If that ever does happen, there will be fully disclosed. I think the truth shall set you free. I believe in that. And so at any rate, I just wanted just to put that out there. That's how we met. There's not a promotional podcast to have Jason on. I just really respect Jason as a person as I've gotten to know him, and appreciate the way he does business. That's why ultimately I decided to join their group with that investment, that sizable investment, and appreciate kind of the life lessons he brings to it as well, in terms of planning for your family's finances and how do you do that with your kids? Like how should you, or how can you do it? Of course, it's different for every person, but I've been on his podcast and he shared some things about his family and what he plans to do with his inheritance and how he's going to pass that on or not pass that on, or what structured ways he can use that to help his kids, but not, disable them by enabling laziness, et cetera. So, that's kind of how that's how our relationship started, and we've known each other for about 3 years now.
Cool.
Jason, I'm really excited to meet you. I know Brian and Andy have both said great things about you. And I think part of the reason they had me on is they know that I've been really interested in just kind of, financial freedom and, kind of how do we use our money, and some of the things that Brian said, but also your life perspective. We've taken a lot of time, I think, and talked about this idea of passing wealth on or not, and what does that look like for our children. And none of us want to mess them up, if you will, right? And so I'm excited to hear, your perspective on this stuff, and both on the financial side of things and the life perspective surrounding those things too. And I guess one of the things that we're always interested on the podcast here is just things that in your life, before we jump straight into that, like what are some things like personally or professionally that have been energizing you, I guess, any passions or things outside of the workplace that, or even in your personal life or professional life that's been energizing you these days surrounding this?
Yeah, thank you. Well, interestingly enough, just 3 months ago, we had a little baby girl, and it's almost a 10-year gap between my almost 10-year-old boy. And so this was a little bit of a surprise. And so I'm restructuring all of my life plans now with when we thought we'd have the kids out of the house. And she's just stolen our hearts. And it's been awesome. And we're so grateful for her. But it has changed my routine. And I think that's, for me, has been the most difficult part of how I can be a good father, a good husband, and support in the home, while also managing the company and our own book of real estate and portfolio. And so that's been the most exciting, trying to envision, what's possible for our company, for our investor partners we work with. That's exciting to me. The new tax bill is going to be a big change, perhaps, to how we approach our investments and what we are able to achieve for our investor partners. And so there's a lot of things coming in 2025 that'll be helpful and exciting to kind of see what we do to grow into the future.
Hey, can I ask you a quick question on that? I know in our professional lives, especially as orthodontists, it can be overwhelming at times. And my wife's told me that I was a better dad to the second two kids than the first two kids, just as my life perspective changed and who I was. Have you felt that now with a 10-year change between the kids?
Yes. Some of it, I think, just has to do with our first three. I was in the early years of growing our business and working long hours. I still work a good amount of hours, but I have some freedom to choose when I work and when I contribute. And so I'm more present, I think, at home. I see that the kids do actually grow up, and you start losing the amount of time that you're going to be able to be with your kids. I think once they reach the age of 12, maybe it was that I heard, that you've almost hit 80% of the time that you're going to be able to enjoy with your kids before they leave the home. And that a lot has to do with when they're in their teenage years, they start spending more and more time with their friends at practices, extracurricular activities, school, and so forth. And so just making time to enjoy the now and being present with them. I think I understand that there is going to be a day that we have to say goodbye, and you see your kids do grow up, and I'm just enjoying all the moments that I can.
That's all you can do. You gotta savor those moments. That's for sure.
Yeah. Hey, you know what that reminds me of briefly is a Stoic phrase that says memento mori, and it means remember your death. Like, remember you're going to die. And it in a positive way, not a morbid way, in a positive way that, hey, everything's going to pass on. Like, our time is finite. And I think we start getting that, like really getting that in our 40s, I've found. Like, oh my gosh, like, this is not going to last forever. Up until then, you know what? Your left brain knows it, but your right brain doesn't quite believe it. It's one of these disconnects. And I think you start to feel actually connected, like, okay, yeah, no, I'm connected now. This will end. And so each moment matters, and it is precious. It's a resource. It's valuable. Every breath is given by God, right? And I think we realize that it does help us be more present. And I think for, those listeners, I think, just know it's a process. And if you're judging yourself too much for not being present, you're still too much in your mind. You're still too much in your ego if you're judging yourself too much. But if you experience that, well, I just wasn't present. I was just totally not focused. And I'm here with my kids, but I wasn't here mentally. I'm physically here, but not spiritually here. You just, if you realize that, you just had a moment of awareness. You just had an encounter with the divine, I would say. You just experienced an encounter with the true self, because you realize, whoa, hey, I'm not aligned here. And so it's like a grace of God that, hey, okay, I can get present here. I can be here now, right? So I think that's the benefit of having, being in our 40s, is that
50s.
we have a little bit, man. My fiance Brad was asking last night, like, how old is Brad? I'm like, I think he's like my age, pretty much ish, like 40 something. So if you're 50, man,
I'm
you're
54
great,
in
bro.
July. Yeah, so.
You're looking great, bro. You're looking good, man.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys. Well, Jason, I want to get into a little bit of your story here. So obviously now you've come a long way, but you started off with your first fourplex at only age 24 while also working for Edward Jones. So take us back to the seed of your investing journey and what was driving you back then.
Well, to better understand it, you have to go back to the beginning. I grew up in Amarillo, Texas. My dad made $35,000 a year during my childhood and lost his job twice, once for 18 months. And it was a real struggle. It was a lot of financial stress. But I came from a really good household where our parents empowered us to believe in chasing your dreams and going after whatever you believe in. And so I saw the struggle that money and the lack thereof had on my parents who wanted to do more for us. And so when I got my first job at 15, I set up a brokerage account and I invested 75% of everything that I earned. And so it's starting the financial discipline at a very early age because I sat down with an advisor who taught me the power of compounding. Mm-hmm. And at the time, my parents pretty much covered all my expenses, right? So I had the ability to set that aside. And so I made $5.15 at Pizza Hut, but 75% of that went into a brokerage account where we put it into 3 different mutual funds. And it was just knowing that I was doing something to set myself up for my future, to be in a better place and hopefully do more for my family than they were able to do for us. That was ultimately what I think inspired me to do something different, because within our social circle, no one had financial freedom, any type of financial success. Mm-hmm. I don't think with my family's social network, there was anyone that had $5,000 in liquidity in their checking and savings account. And that's just how I grew up. And so when I started to see the power of the compounding work for me, I think I had $12,000 maybe that I was able to go to school and college with. It became my hopes and dreams that this money was going to make an impact someday, because I knew, a $12,000 amount could amount to a 7-figure sum in retirement if I was able to just keep letting that money work and keep adding to it. But I didn't know anything more than that. There came a time where my wife and I wanted to either buy a home with that money, using it as a down payment, or rent somewhere. And I started to run some scenarios where, what if there was a way to potentially buy a multifamily property as an investment, live in one of the units, but have the other units rent income cover the majority of our expenses? That is what truly inspired me to go down the path of, could we make it work buying an investment property to help offset our housing cost? So I don't mean to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but I came from the mindset of frugality.
Yes.
I need to live on less, and that's the only thing that I was focused on. And so I actually studied the Bureau of Labor Statistics consumer spending surveys that came out each year. That's what kind of nerd I am. But I would look at what was the average percentage that people would spend in different buckets. Mm-hmm. Real estate and housing was number 1. Healthcare, transportation, those were other bigger buckets. Taxes are our biggest expense in America. And so that was another one. And all I did was, what could I do to spend less than everyone else is? And of that, that's then money I'm keeping. And of what I keep, how can I make that work for me and work harder for me? And that is all I was looking at. And so when I bought that fourplex, the rent income actually covered all of our housing cost. It covered all of our mortgage plus a little bit of profit. And for me, I now was able to save 36% more than the average American. And I used that savings and invested it back into the brokerage account that I was already trying to live on a certain amount to invest monthly. And that kind of set the path for me to buy a duplex shortly after, and then more multifamily properties from there. And then the power of compounding was realized, where I started to see something truly happening earlier on in my life than I thought was going to be possible.
So Jason, I think one of the things I'm hearing you say, I mean, this discipline early on, and I think that was something that was instilled in me. My parents were, Depression era kids, and so I remember my mom once getting so frustrated at my dad because she's like, well, for God's sakes, he thinks we're broke if he's not saving 30% of his income. And my dad was in the service and didn't have a big paycheck, but that discipline of that money from an early age somehow got instilled in him, which then was passed down to me. And I think as we talk more about our kids and kind of how they play into some of this stuff, I think one of the biggest gifts I think that we can teach them is maybe that discipline, or that, whether it's living below your means, or that frugality piece, right? And I think that's a concern, especially as orthodontists, this lavish vacations or things, and the kids just start thinking that's normal, right? Like that's the way it is. And I think one of the things you say there's maybe the biggest gift that we can give our kids is not the money, but the discipline, right? And and whether that's discipline and how we approach not just financial stuff, but other things too, right? And whether your mom telling you can achieve any dream that you go after is probably the biggest gift that they gave you, you know what I mean? And in that sense of like, we're just going to figure this out, right?
It could even be naive optimism at times. But if you believe it, you're willing to do different activities. And it's in the doing of those activities that can ultimately lead to a different life than maybe you would have had otherwise.
Yeah.
Yes, the mindset affects the actions, which affect the phenomena, right? So it starts with this formless thought, and you put it into form in some degree by action, whether you write down a goal, okay, now it's written down. Okay, this is now coming into form. And then I'm going to do that. I'm going to make this phone call. I'm going to take this money out of my account. I'm going to put it into here. Then you're actually, interacting in the phenomenal world and making a change. But it all starts up, in your head, in your heart. And, Brad and I were talking about this last night. We chatted for a few minutes on the phone, and we were talking about, kids. And Jason, I remember being on your podcast a year or so ago, and from what I recall, you had mentioned something about how you didn't plan on leaving, in a typical and like inheritance for your kids. And Brad had mentioned to me last night when we were on the phone, he had said, what was the book you referenced, Brad? It was like
Die with Zero. Yeah,
Die with Zero. Mm-hmm. Right. And so there's this idea. So walk us through, and this actually came up in our last podcast with Dr. Brian Horsley.
It did.
How growing up with hard experiences actually shaped his life, and how if you learn from those experiences and then you don't also find a way to pass those difficult experiences on to your kids, and you shelter them from the very thing that made you what you are, like the obstacle is the way, Ryan Holiday, and that goes back to Marcus Aurelius, again, as another Stoic quote, the obstacle is the way. In your case, I would say what I'm seeing is I'm zooming out and seeing, okay, the obstacle was the lack of financial resources, or the perceived suffering or real suffering, right, of those limitations. And so that instilled in you, hey, I don't want to experience this suffering. I want to have more autonomy. I want to have more choice. I want to have a little more control, right? And so it sounds like, well, gosh, that shaped you, that drove you. You're talking about your success story, and it started as a seed being planted in hardship, in difficulty. And so tell us a little bit about that, and remind me what your plan is with your kids. And if you've ever heard of that book, Die with Zero, or that philosophy, I'm interested in everyone's thoughts here. But Jason, remind us of your plan for your kids, and what are you going to do there?
Well, no, thank you. So first off, I think it's in the struggle that you become stronger and more refined. And that's what's helped me, I think, be where we are today with Harris Investment Group and what my role is in the teaching and education, because many people look to me and my expertise as someone that went from rags to riches. So there must have been some learning that took place along the way. I have a team that are much more competent, capable, and smarter than I am that have helped us implement institutional type processes and models. But I'm more of the person who can share the story and what I've done and how I've evolved.
The mouth. The mouth.
Beginning.
Richard Rohr would say, like, he's a mouth. Like, I kind of feel the same way in a way. I'm a mouth. I don't do certain things very well, but I can, have a mouth.
My dad says I have the gift of gab. So it's I can speak to it, and I love at that. I love the education. I love teaching. I'm very passionate about it because it's impacted my life in such a meaningful way that has allowed me to meet great people like you and others. And so I think that's exactly why I want my kids to go out into the world and struggle. I want them to experience some hardships. I want mom and dad to be the teachers to help them understand life lessons, but it's going to be through their own experiences that they're going to become the better version of themselves. And so I don't want my kids to expect handouts. I want the teaching to take place today in our home so that they feel prepared and ready to go on and take on the challenges of the world. But my wife and I started with nothing, and I think there's some good that comes from that because we look back and those are some of our best times together was in the struggle because we had to work together as a team. And so I'll share just a couple tidbits. We do some things now to have our kids invest their current money that they make. They have a small allowance. It's very small, but they use Greenlight, and they have to allocate a portion to charitable causes, a portion to their future for investing, and the rest of it they can allocate for spending. And that there can be goals oriented around that. And my kids are all very different. My son, my oldest, is just like me. He doesn't spend anything. He wants to invest everything he can, and he wants to understand how he can allocate to stocks, how he can allocate to real estate, how he can use tax-free or tax-favored accounts to do it. And my daughter, on the other hand, has a gift of spending. She can find all the best deals that are available, and she wants the nicest things, all within her 11-year-old mind, right? But she's also one of my hardest workers. She's very disciplined. She's determined. If there's something that she wants, she will go after it. And so I know how to craft those gifts that she has to help hopefully empower her to go out and live a great life, a life of contribution, a life of giving. And so every child's unique and different, but we're able to teach them now on a small amount of money because it's okay to fail. And I would rather them fail now and learn through that experience to go out again and be better equipped to do that. And so that's what we're trying to do now in our home.
All right, Pearlers, you've got to hear our incredible lineup of speakers for the MOPC. We have keynotes from the Braces guy, Dr. Grant Collins, from the widely successful orthodontist, Dr. Ben Fishbein, marketing pearls from Dr. Kyle Fagala, clinical pearls from Dr. Brad Chvatal, Tito Norris, Bill Lehman, and David Lowe, aligner pearls from yours truly, and life pearls from Dr. Brian Anderson, plus 20 more speakers. The cherry on top is our pearls party under the Apollo Saturn V rocket with dinner, drinks, and live music from the world's only all-orthodontist band, Relapse. It's an incredible show, I promise you. 2 hours of music. It's the only show we're playing all year. We're just 3 months away from the 7th annual Mother of Pearls Conference held at the Kennedy Space Center this coming October 10th through 11th, and we are almost sold out. Reserve one of our remaining seats by registering today at orthodonticpearls.org. That's orthodonticpearls.org today. We'll see you there.
Jason, quick question for you there. So your intention is to not leave any inheritance to your kids? Is that what I'm hearing? Or
I don't want to say that that's entirely the case. Right now, we do have Roth IRAs that we already max out for them annually. They do not know about this. I hope they never listen to the podcast. But there is a good amount that's accruing behind the scenes that my kids do not know about.
Yeah.
And,
it's like a parachute that they don't know is there, a second parachute.
Someday, when they're ready and financially responsible, they will be made aware of this money, and they'll be able to take that money and start doing good with it. That's the hope.
Jason, can I chat with it just a minute or two here? So one thing for me is I've spent a lot of my life, looking at financial stuff, making sure that I feel like I'm set up for the future, because we've been taught, my generation, is Social Security is not going to be there. Don't count on it. There's going to be nothing, right? And so I spent a lot of time, energy, and probably angst, preparing for the future. And I've sacrificed a lot of time with my family through my business and through investments that I've made that have created me a lot of stress and anxiety through the years, and feel like I have a sound financial plan and I've done well. But with that, that's a burden. If I could never have my kids have to worry about their retirement, yet I want them to have the struggle, I think, of, like, my daughter, for example, she's a teacher at UCLA, and she's got a budget and she's trying to make ends meet, and she's got a puppy she's trying to raise and has to budget how much can she spend on different things. And with that, I guess for me, there would be some peace of mind to say, hey, they've got a 13% match. If you put that money in, they're giving you free money. You understand that. She's a math teacher. Of course she does. And I said, I'll give you back what you're going to put into that retirement fund, because they're going to give you this 13%. But I also want you to know that you kind of don't need to save for retirement, because I've got enough for you when that time comes that you're going to be able to have that, right? And so secondly, the thing is this book, Die with Zero, that I found intriguing, which is, and I talked a little bit with Brian last night about this, is that giving people money when it matters. That if my parents had come to me when I bought my first practice, that was $480,000 when I bought my first practice, and they would have said, Brad, you want to know what? 40 years from now, when we die, we would give you $2 million. But right now, we could give you $480,000. And we'll buy that practice for you. So we know that that's going to be your life passion. You're going to work there. You're going to make it thrive. You're going to make it go. But we want you to know you don't need to go get a bank loan. We're going to give you that money. My dad's 81 years old. Like, if he lives another 10 years and I'm 63, any amount of money he gives me is going to be inconsequential. It's going to be my kids' money at that point, right? And so I guess your thought surrounding that. And I think I understand the struggle. Like, I don't want to give a 16-year-old on when they get their driver's license, a Lamborghini, and say, you're responsible for the payments on this thing and the upkeep and learning how to drive it and keeping it clean and maintained. I'm setting them up for failure because they weren't ready for that, right? But back to this, I think there's a huge portion of our responsibility is to teach kids to know the struggle, to know the value of money, to know what the dollar's worth, but also something to say, man, if, for example, as a kid, if you didn't have new shirts and clean shirts that you could wear to school, and you said, no, I think that was valuable, like to get teased at school because my friends teased me, and that really made me who I am. And I guess any thoughts around that? Like, I guess just that's something I've struggled with and tried to talk to lots of people with, because it's something that I felt, again, this financial piece is something that I've worried about, and I still worry about. And I still, if the market dropped 90% tomorrow, then what? Kind of stuff. And it's, gosh, Japan went 15 years without a change in their market after it dropped 90%. And, those kind of things that I go to sleep at night thinking about.
First off, Brad, I think you recognize no matter what level of net worth or money you have, you will always have money problems. The problems may change, but you'll never reach a level where you no longer worry and stress about money.
Right.
Your fiduciary obligation or your stewardship with that money could evolve and change based on that level of wealth and amount of money, but you can't ever get rid of the trials and problems around money. My money problems have just evolved into different types of problems, is what I'm saying. Yep. But right. I do want to ask you one quick question and then go back to that. Have you ever thought, had your parents given you the $480,000, how different you would be today based on what you had to go through because they didn't?
So thankfully, like, my practice was successful from day one. I bought an existing practice and I could float that note, and, really the only process was I kind of fell in love with my bank because they were the only one who would give me a loan, right? Like after I, interviewed 7 different bankers who were like, we're not going to, and one's like, yeah, come on in. We love dentists, right? So I think, again, I tried to put myself in that position, and I think there would have been some peace of mind surrounding the fact that, well, that's paid off. Like that, I don't know that it would have made me work any less or changed who I was, but I think I was brought up that way, right? And I think, I guess the point I've tried to convey to people is, in many households, there's no financial discussion. We don't talk about perhaps death or inheritance or what am I going to get when you're gone, or is there anything? But we talk to them about throwing a baseball. We talk to them about good study habits. We talk to them about, hey, if you're dating a girl, act a certain way. Or we talk to them about, certain things that, that we coach them in all other aspects of life. And I think I would imagine, as we talk more here, that you would suggest, no, we need to teach our kids about money. We need to teach them as a life skill about this, and that early savings that you're talking about, which is like, let's start this discipline, let's start these things. And so I think it's surrounding that is more important. But anyway, I think just that education piece of not being afraid, not having it be a taboo topic in a household.
Yeah, what that tells me, Brad, though, is that you were financially prepared, ready, with the right resources and tools to take on the $480,000 loan or gift. And that is what I'm looking for with my kids.
Yeah, right.
When they are ready, and I know that it wouldn't have changed perhaps too much how the outcome would have been for their work ethic and their lifestyle and so forth, they are ready to receive more and do good with more. And that's really how I'm approaching it. Shaq is known to always tell his kids, this isn't your money, this is dad's money. And there's always these jokes about how Shaq talks about that. But I think that's what's more important for my kids to understand today at their current ages is this is mom and dad's hard work. We are going to try to teach you all of the necessary foundational items that can help you go out and create your own life and make it your own, because we don't want there to be some type of, well, you've achieved what you have because of mom and dad, some type of nepotism or other things.
Makes sense. Yeah.
I want them to go out into their own world and create their own lives and their own successes that they could be proud of, with us being a resource of knowledge and hopefully even sometimes maybe money and capital, but there'll be some type of business plan expectation. I want to understand what they're going to do with the money and perhaps some type of loan structure that's favorable, but also requires them to still go out and try to work hard. And I think I will know, Brad, I hope that I know when the right time is for me to give more, and knowing that it's not going to impact my kid's life in a negative way. That's what I want to avoid.
Fellow orthodontists, are you ready to elevate your practice, connect with brilliant minds, and get inspired in one of the most beautiful settings in the country? You won't want to miss the 7th annual Mother of Pearls Conference at the Kennedy Space Center, where they have live rocket launches, meet with real astronauts, and party under the Apollo Saturn V rocket with dinner, drinks, live music from Relapse, and connect with 500 of your colleagues. Although you're going to learn a lot from our 20 speakers, including Ben Fishbein, Grant Collins, the Braces Guy, Dr. Brian Anderson, Brad Chvatal, Tito Norris, Bill Lehman, David Lowe, and 20 more other speakers. You're going to learn a bunch from Social CE when you're connecting with 500 of your colleagues, learning about what works in their practice. Be sure to sign up today. You'll learn from the industry's greatest consultants, see some of the best exhibits in orthodontics to take your practice to the next level, and of course, connect with each other and create lasting memories with you and your team. Sign up at orthodonticpearls.org today.
So one thing I just want to mention, I'm going to take us to the next topic, but I think it's important to realize that the sweet spot in life is when there's tension that won't break you. So we need to give our kids tension that won't break them. I think, Brad, that's what you're talking about. Like, hey, that they experience the tension, that they don't have this like, well, I don't need to worry about anything because I've got like 10 parachutes. Like, well, maybe I've got one, or maybe I don't even know about the second parachute, right? Like, I've got a parachute, okay, but it's still kind of risky. So I got to be real careful. I got to know how to use the thing. And this is my life on the line, right? So I think growth comes from creative tension. when it's not fully solved, when there is skin in the game, when it's not just, oh, it doesn't really matter because I've got so much comfort that I experience no tension. So I think that is crucial, is that we as individuals recognize that. And also with the kids, to your point, Jason, I think that recognizing that they're autonomous, our goal as a parent is to empower them to be their own selves, not what we think they should be or they should carry on our legacy. Like if they want to, great. And if they don't want to, with their experience and their autonomy, hey, I passed on what I could pass on to you, and it's your job to run with it. So I want to take us to the tax savings portion. Ultimately, that was a big reason why I invested with you guys, the Harris Investment Group, was I felt like it was very smart from a tax saving standpoint. It was creative, and it was beneficial in the sense of, some of these investments that I looked at were like these phantom losses, like if I do this, you get this phantom loss, and it doesn't really help anyone, but you get some tax savings, but no one else benefits, and the government gets some money, but maybe not as much as they would have gotten. With you, I felt like, okay, no, you're actually, the reason that there's this tax incentive to put it into real estate, to put it into gas stations, to put it into multifamily housing is the government doesn't want to have to build every gas station or every multifamily housing complex. They want people in private industry who are more efficient, who do have the creative tension. Why? Because it's their life. It's their life, right? So that's what we were just talking about. So that they outsource it to, hey, no, we want people, contractors and developers and stuff to be putting their money out here because they can kind of do it better than we can. Why? Because they have purpose and they have vision and there's something on the line. They got skin in the game. So to me, it was like, okay, investing with you guys, I felt like, okay, this isn't just a phantom loss. Like I'm actually putting my money somewhere where it can do some good. It can hopefully provide a better quality of life for people in Dallas or St. Louis, and we're going to renovate these apartment complexes in a nice neighborhood and maybe make something for the sort of the in-betweens that they couldn't traditionally afford to live in that neighborhood. That's a great neighborhood. Well, now they can, because you buy a property that's older, but it's got a lot of potential. It's in a good place, and you can put some money into it, get them into a better location so they're surrounded by a community that's maybe going to support them more fully in helping them to realize their potential, and something that they can afford. So I really loved that about what you guys do in the gas stations too. Like, hey, let's provide a great gas station for truckers, people that are out there long hours. They're so solitary, and then they can finally take a place to rest that's comfortable, and they feel like, I get it. This is clean here, and the bathrooms are clean. Anyway, I thought that was really great. Talk to us about that, the tax saving part of this, because I think a lot of our listeners probably have a decent income and they want to save taxes, obviously, and if they can do it in a way that also is beneficial, I think that's fantastic. So tell us about that.
Well, I'll start with just saying it goes back to keeping more. What's your biggest expense, Brian, do you think? Most of us, if you're a high producer orthodontist running a practice, taxes are likely to be, if not the biggest, one of the most expensive costs that you have. And so for me, it just all originated again. How can I have more tax efficiency with my tax planning each year? How can I invest more tax efficiently? And ultimately, how can I grow a net worth that has a permanent tax-free income and growth plan? And so that's the basis of where it all began. And so looking at the tax code, there's all types of tax deductions, and then there's tax credits, and some are much better than others. And I was fortunate early in my career when I was in wealth strategist, a financial advisor. I had a high net worth family office that I worked with, that the gentleman developed student housing projects and owned truck stops. And he sold one of his developments for a $21 million capital gain. And he used the depreciation from a truck stop to shelter the full tax liability of this $21 million capital gain. And I was blown away. I thought there's just no way you can make that much money and legally not pay taxes. And so that's when I understood the IRS has these incentives to help navigate the way people allocate their money. People like you and I who have disposable income, taxes are going to be a big burden on you unless you do what the government would like you to do to solve problems in our current America that we live in. And right now, affordable housing is a big one. Energy, if we can keep energy costs down, it's a big economical driver. There's lots of incentives for people who invest in energy, whether it's renewable energy or oil and gas. And so that's what helped shape my investment, is understanding, well, I like real estate. I understand it to be a good investment when done correctly, but it also has one of the best tax benefits in the tax code because, like you mentioned, it's a phantom loss. Most of our tax deductions that you guys have in your practice, you're spending actual dollars that hopefully will ultimately drive more growth and revenue in your future, but you're spending money, so it's a true cash expense. Depreciation is one of two of the only tax deductions in the tax code that's a non-cash expense. So if I'm able to accrue meaningful amounts of non-cash deductions, while also having my dollars go into a vehicle that grows over time through appreciation, provides cash flow and income today, and is backed by something like a hard asset, a physical, tangible building, unlike a paper investment like stocks would be. That's a really phenomenal product that also banks love and are willing to lend on, introducing leverage. And so that is what, for me, real estate became the wealth strategy of choice for me that was going to help me grow my wealth, but also do it tax efficiently. And the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017 and the current tax bill today has made those tax benefits even that much better. And so I'm happy to go into an example, but for the sake of time, just let me know if there's something within that to speak on.
Jason, there is something that I wanted to ask you there. So first of all, I'm fully on board with what you're saying. You know, we were in that Pearls Fund at the end of last year. We jumped on that and looking forward to great things coming from there. But in general, one of my mentors out here, I recognized how quickly they were building wealth through similar strategies to what you're doing. Now, they weren't invested in gas stations. It was more dental practices and owning the real estate. But it's a similar idea, you know, offsetting our high income. And most of us are at the top tax bracket. That's a big chunk that we're saving. Now, one of the things that comes up on the forums a lot, as you know, we run some Facebook groups for orthodontists, and investment advice does get thrown around. Brad has thrown his hat into the ring several times. But what I constantly see is this notion that really we're all wasting our time by going after real estate, by going after certain side hustles, and really the best way to build wealth for a high earner is to just blindly invest into a passive index fund. You know, maybe something that is automated to rebalance, but the idea is these are basically free or almost no fee. And then the common wisdom is that on the long term, the market's going to beat any kind of investment that you're going after anyway. Typically, you know, I'm not sure I agree with that for a lot of the reasons that you're saying. I mean, I think that what gets overlooked there are the tax advantages of this depreciation. I think that owning a hard asset that you have complete control over is also a form of diversification. I don't want to be all in on the stock market. So I'd like to hear your opinion on that. And then I'd also like to hear Brad's follow-up, because Brad, I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that you fall into more of that traditional camp. Is that correct?
Yeah, with some caveats. I want to hear Jason's take on this, and I'd love to chime in with my experience on some of this. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I could speak to a lot of this. This is a topic that I really enjoy because strategy for me was always critical. And I started first from the framework of I need to be tax efficient with my approach to my investments because there is a tax drag effect to the overall return. And so I'm always looking to maximize tax efficiency, which includes then taking advantage of all types of retirement accounts that are available to you, especially when there's a matching component which for you guys, maybe you're the employer. And so maybe that's just an added cost to incentivize employees that are working under you, right? But I max out my retirement accounts every year. I max out my Roth IRAs. We also do other retirement plans because we have other businesses that have allowed us to take advantage of other retirement contributions beyond just my 401k and my IRAs. But I am doing all of those activities, and I'm doing all of them Roth so that I can have that money grow tax-free. Now, I don't want to get into too much here, but I will say outside of my employer plan, I self-direct. And so within self-directed retirement accounts, I'm able to allocate outside of your traditional asset classes like stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And so that allows me to do hard money private loans. I own a commercial real estate building in Milwaukee. I have done private equity and venture investments. And the reason for that is you want to have your highest and best growth opportunity investments within a tax-free growth account so that any potential upside or gain can be a tax-free gain. And so that's part of the approach within the self-directed Roth accounts that I have. Outside of that, however,
I was just going to say, Jace, just so for the listeners that they know that that's a self-directed IRA, is if they want to research that, whether through you or someone else, but just that self-directed IRA platform. And there's lots of firms out there that you can do where you can hold these alternative investments, whether it be artwork or real estate or automobiles or whatever random stuff in there. Yeah.
That's right. And that just allows for a diversification vehicle beyond your mutual funds that most likely you have limited options to invest within the 401k platform, because there's only so many choices they allow. And so that's outside of the 401k money. But for me also, I'm a strong high income earner. I have the same tax problems as many of you do, but I'm still able to lean into the real estate to be my tax shelter, which means I can forego the deductibility of the traditional 401k plans. And so I'm able to go all things Roth with my 401k. Because of the backdoor Roth IRA conversion strategy, I still max out my IRAs through the Roth component so that it can be tax-free. But I'm using real estate as the tax shelter vehicle. And so if you want, I'll just give a quick example. But when I go and buy a real estate investment, let's just say, just to make the math easy, it's $1 million investment that I'm buying. With a truck stop specifically, I may be able to get as much as a $900,000 first year depreciation loss amount. But I don't have to put up $1 million to buy the investment. I may only put up $300,000 and use the bank to finance the rest. But I get all of the economic upsides and tax benefits as the owner of the real estate, which is where leverage becomes very powerful when used correctly. And so on this $300,000 investment, I can get a $900,000 depreciation loss benefit. And in 2025, it's likely to come back. It's currently introduced in the tax bill, where 100% of that is eligible for deduction in the first year, meaning it's an expense line item on your taxes. And so I can use, because of my active status, my wife or I's active status in real estate, that $900,000, not just against passive income sources alone, but also my W-2 income, also my capital gains. So if I were to sell an appreciated stock or crypto or whatever it may be that has a meaningful gain, I can take some of that money off the table and not pay taxes legally because I have a $900,000 tax shelter within the depreciation loss from the real estate investment I made. And that is how I've been able to grow my income over the years and still keep and maintain a very low tax liability as I continue to invest and diversify between my retirement accounts, private equity, hard money loans, and my real estate investments, so that the broader portfolio of what I'm investing in is still diversified. But I have my tax efficient plan through the real estate mostly and other charitable deductions and other things that we do to get tax deduction.
Question for you. Can our listeners or any of us invest in real estate through you? Do you have properties that you can put them in, or do you have like a fund of properties, or what? How do you organize that there?
Yeah, thank you, Brad. Brian is one of our investors, as he mentioned, and so we do offer limited partners to come in and invest with us, either via a fund structure where we allocate to 6 to 9 properties, or direct. You may want to go direct into just one deal and have a tick spot position and take the economics of just that one deal. Mm-hmm. We offer both.
After the last MOPC in October of 2024, we organized a Pearls fund that was available to anybody in the Orthodontic Pearls group. And Jason lowered some of the normal limits for like an accredited investor. I think is normally what, 200K or 500K or something, down to like 50K or something. So that's closed. We haven't talked about it this year, but we've sort of, we chat every, once in a while, every month, probably we exchange a text message or two, or sometimes we meet together and have lunch or do a podcast, talk for an hour or two. So I imagine that'll be something we'll probably do again. Jason, do you think this year?
I'd like to. Yeah, we'll be out at the Mother of Pearls conference in Florida this year. And so we're excited, for our team to go there. And so, we'd absolutely consider doing that.
Jason, one of the things I'd like to chime in for, and again, with our listeners, the perspective I can bring on this is I invested a large sum of money with a group called NRIA, which I'm sure you're familiar with, right? And which was, this is the brochure that they sold, right? This kind of model, whether you could group in a group of funds, and it's been nothing but a headache in my life. And, it was run by a bunch of criminals and crooks that are now in prison, right? And Jeez. So we've lost the money to the point where I was actually interviewed by the FBI and the Department of Justice to possibly testify in this case, and thankfully it didn't come to that. They couldn't guarantee me that it was not run by the mafia out of New Jersey. So at any rate, these guys are now serving time, and the investment that was a large sum of money became zero, and became, thankfully, since it was fraudulent and criminal activity, I was able to at least write it off my income versus just an ordinary loss. But so I guess the thing is that I firmly believe in real estate. I bought my own building, developed the property, and then sold it off to a private equity group. And it was a very good investment, right? And I get how that process works. And I understand, the leverage, the depreciation, all of these things from a scale of building a 24,000 square foot building and developing it and selling it off, and, after filling it up. So I think it's nice to have someone that, like you, who can say, hey, all these brochures to me look the same, right? You're going to invest a certain amount of money for 3 years. You're going to get nothing. You're going to get this depreciation, and then it's going to grow, and you're going to have these phenomenal returns that look amazing. And every glossy brochure, whether it's a Marriott hotel or whether it's some high rise in New York City, comes across the same. And so I guess for me, as I sit here and saying, I'm once bitten, twice shy in those things. And so to have someone like you who certainly seems upstanding and kind of like, yeah, Brett, this can be done the right way, because I know there are groups that can do that. And certainly I think there is a lot of value in that, in exactly what you're saying. And that's why I did it. But to be able to have someone like you who's reputable and walk people through this process and know that their money is as safe and sound as it can be when it's backed by real estate. But also this cautionary tale of be careful about 1-800 numbers and lots of radio ads and TV ads of come join this thing that may or may not be real. The buildings were real, but their business model was not on the up and up, right?
Did you have direct title or ownership to the buildings, or was that not even achieved?
So it was, fund of funds, basically. It was, you could invest in individual properties within this group with the fund of, 30 properties. You could come in under one and kind of share in the profitability of one, but you were under the guise of this thing protected by the 30 properties. If yours didn't do all that great, when you had some upside potential, I think it's much like many people as they join a DSO, right? Which is they're sold this stock, which is, hey, I can participate in the ownership of my own practice if it does well. But hey, look, you're diversifying over 100 practices on the stock that's here, right? So I think in a different way, I think bringing it back to dentistry or orthodontics, it's like we're technically investing in all of these other properties when they give us stock. we're investing in these other things. So not to detract from what you do. And I think I have a great feeling for you, and I have a great vibe for what you're doing. And I think just, as Andy said, I've jumped in on some of these chat boards of, hey, careful, I lost a lot of money doing this, right? And that's not, again, I don't want to detract from what you do, because it sounds like you're doing this in the right way. That's there. And I appreciate you saying like, hey, well, we could decrease the amount of money that you got to put in, but also my question is always like, somebody's making money all along the way, right? If this was such a great investment, I'm going to get 15% returns and be able to deduct things and do all this. It's like, why do you need my money? Jason, you sounds like you've been extremely successful, and out of the goodness of your heart, you're just saying, hey, let's get a bunch of other people involved in here. I'd think, man, why not just keep it all to yourself and get those returns? And because, all along the way, there's, somebody who's going to, who gets to list the property, who gets to develop the property, who gets to take a cut all along the way. And so the top guy's making 50% or 60%, and I'm making 13%, right? So, anyway, I know there was a lot of stuff in there, but I just, back to tax advantage stuff. So me being once bitten, twice shy, I'm in tax-free munis, right? Like, so, and then also, for example, not being in those index funds, but being in stock managed accounts, where one of the international ones I'm in, yielded a huge loss. It still appreciated 12% last year, but gave me a huge loss that I could write off against my other gains, right? Because they're buying and selling stocks individually, and I don't just own the fund there. So I totally get it, right? It's not what we make, it's what we keep and what we get to take home at the end of the day. And there's lots of avenues, and it sounds like you've got some nice plays on real estate. And I think just if people have an opportunity to use someone like you, and if anything, to say, having a trustworthy person that can do these deals and is an upstanding person, it's great to know that you exist. So,
well, thank you for that, Brad. I do have a question or two for you, and that's great feedback. So I appreciate you going into the detail, because there are, bad apples out there that unfortunately make the industry look bad as a whole. You mentioned the tax-free munis. I'm assuming that you've probably maxed out retirement accounts and tried to over the years because of the tax efficiency there.
So, Jason, real quick on the retirement funds, right? So, a couple of things is the required distributions that happen. Number one, and number two, I'm 53, but if I wanted to retire soon, getting access to those funds becomes more challenging, right? So, if I keep doing a defined benefit plan and I keep putting everything only in tax advantage accounts that are retirement funds, it's like, well, I'm 58 now and I need that money, right? And maybe you have some strategies surrounding that, but it's also like, hey, I do have to do some taxable stuff. I can max those things out, but if those are at a level where I'm like confident and comfortable with, it's like, okay, let's look at some of these other things that I have access to the money more readily. So keep going. I'm sorry.
Well, no, it's good. A couple things on that. I was in wealth management before, and so there is an early withdrawal opportunity before 59.5, which is the current cutoff. I think there's talks about that changing. However, you can access it 5 years sooner under certain stipulations, so you may want to look at that, an early withdrawal, if you wanted to create a payment plan to take monies out beyond or before, without penalty, the 59.5 age. But I was just looking at it as, you like tax-free munis probably because there's low risk of default. There's still some default risk, but it's very minimal. Don't buy in Detroit or some other municipality that's gone under. So, but with that being said, there's typically a trade-off of return. And so most likely, unless you've invested in munis really recently, you're somewhere between a 4 and 6% yield, somewhere in there, but you get that income tax-free. And so what I would look at and say, well, in today's current market, real estate offers a similar tax-free income as long as you can use the depreciation loss benefit to offset the passive income. But today, in today's market, we can attain a 8 to 10% or better cash on cash yield year one, with an increasing amount every year because of the annual escalators built into the lease payment. And so I would look at it and say, I like real estate as a hard asset. You certainly have to vet your operator and your asset manager to make sure they're trustworthy, as you've mentioned. But if you can get comfortable with that, you could potentially see even a doubling of your income while also getting tax-free because of the depreciation loss and upside in the equity or appreciation that hopefully takes place over time. And so, and it sounds like you allocate to real estate anyways, but it is something that a lot of our investor partners we work with, they look at real estate potentially as a fixed income opportunity when they're looking at all their other fixed income options like bonds, corporate munis, government bonds, or annuities and other products, and saying, wow, I could lean into real estate and I know it has growth opportunity, but even the income alone is more than what I could get into other fixed income assets.
Yeah. So, and I like that. And I think, Jason, for me, one of the things is this peace of mind of a monthly income, right? I can't retire on a lump sum. Like you said, there's never this kind of peace of mind of a dollar amount that's in the bank, right? And so if you told me, hey, Brad, I'm going to give you X dollars a month and that's going to be coming in perpetuity, with this, like, that there's some peace of mind of going like, okay, the rest of my investments can do their thing, whatever they're doing, but here's the money you can go spend without tax consequence, year in and year out. There's a huge peace of mind to me about that.
All right, Pearlers, you've got to hear our incredible lineup of speakers for the MOPC. We have keynotes from the Braces guy, Dr. Grant Collins, from the widely successful orthodontist, Dr. Ben Fishbein, marketing pearls from Dr. Kyle Fagala, clinical pearls from Dr. Brad Chvatal, Tito Norris, Bill Lehman, and David Lowe, aligner pearls from yours truly, and life pearls from Dr. Brian Anderson, plus 20 more speakers. The cherry on top is our pearls party under the Apollo Saturn V rocket with dinner, drinks, and live music from the world's only all-orthodontist band, Relapse. It's an incredible show, I promise you. 2 hours of music. It's the only show we're playing all year. We're just 3 months away from the 7th annual Mother of Pearls Conference held at the Kennedy Space Center this coming October 10th through 11th, and we are almost sold out. Reserve one of our remaining seats by registering today at orthodonticpearls.org. That's orthodonticpearls.org today. We'll see you there.
Brad, I really appreciate your perspective here. And I think it's really great to remind our listeners that in life, there's always a shadow side. There's always a dark side. Like, yes, we want to try and align ourselves with the light side, like the positive people, the people that are doing it, quote unquote, right, the upstanding people. But the reality is there's always still risk. There's always still, maybe bad actors. There's always trade-offs. There's always trade-offs. And so there are always trade-offs. My English teacher mother would correct my grammar there. There are always
and your
trade-offs.
Wife.
Soon to be wife. She's an English teacher. So there are always trade-offs. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that, because I think anything that's too one-sided, like it's all great. It's all good. Hey, this is amazing. I mean, we learn from an early age, anything that's too good to be true probably is. And so I think this is really valuable to have these discussions. And Jason, I appreciate your willingness to have the discussion and to dive in like, okay, well, what was the deal? Who were the people? What did you get a deed? Was it this? Was it that? And this is the stuff that builds trust. And ultimately, that's why I decided to invest with you guys again. But I know that investments are always a risk. It's always a risk. But to me, I really liked your guys' approach. That I felt like there was good integrity. That at the bottom of it, and of course, I know everyone has a story, and of course, they're going to put the best story out there. But I really have felt that from you, and that doesn't make you, invincible or immune to risk or whatever. But I have felt that you're a more principled person. That behind this all, you understand that money is a vehicle for having me fulfill a deeper purpose in my life, and having my kids fulfill a deeper purpose, and having my kids learn to be autonomous and to take their place in the world and to add value and to be a meaningful difference. And one day I'm going to pass on, and I hope I can give them something, especially wisdom, not just a pot of cash, not just a bag of coins, some wisdom to pass on. So I think this is really, really productive and really good. So just for our listeners, I think it's always good to consider what are the downsides, and ask your advisors, talk to them, ask them these questions. And if they squeam and they get sort of, they don't want to talk about it, they don't want to dive into it, they want to sort of skirt it. Well, the only way is through. There's that, very, very popular cliche, maybe even quote, you can't go around. The only way is through. And so I think that's that always bodes well, that if you can have a real discussion and you can face some discomfort. Okay, well, this is, I mean, you Jason could have been like, well, that's kind of a downer. Let's cut this part out of the podcast where we talk about how these things can go south, and this is really I think this is good. This is good.
Yeah,
this is where it's at. This is the creative tension.
I think it's having people do due diligence. And Jason, I love that you're tax savvy. And I think if anything that I'm hearing out of this conversation, which is your financial advisor should be talking to you about tax implications of what you're doing, right? And if they're not, they're selling you short for sure, right? If everything's and I think that's where people don't see the value of an advisor. What Andy was saying, a lot of these chat boards are simply, hey, go just put it in the S&P 500. And, well, the great thing is that, well, what happens when I go to take that money out down the road? What, is there, and leaving lots on the table because of the tax implications of things that are like that, right? And that's where an advisor like you can be worth every nickel that we pay you, is that someone to say, well, look, I'm going to save you this much on the back end. Yeah, you're paying me some money here to do this, but here's the back end, and here's how you're going to save so much relative to it. I think also, this having someone like you to vet properties and do things. There's also someone who's very active in the dental community who really reaches out to dentists. I'm choosing my words carefully here, but and charges them an exorbitant sum to help them get into an individual property. And we're talking charges them $100,000 a year per year going on to be to help you find a property and do what you're talking about, right? And anyway, so finding someone like you, I think, is an avenue, and I think many people who are in a lot of these chat boards will know who this person is, but it's an opportunity to say, hey, you can get that. You don't need to go invest in some kind of a group like this to be able to do these types of things.
Very rarely will you see your value out of those types of groups, Brad. Yeah, absolutely. I would like to say, too, I have found that the best advisor on my team of advisors is typically a well-qualified tax professional. Because taxes are so important in your planning of how you're going to grow your wealth through your practice, you need to have a great tax professional that understands how to protect you as you do your tax planning each year, and utilize him or her in the way you allocate your investments via real estate or retirement accounts, real estate, and other things. The financial advisor or wealth advisor should be also a very critical team member. But for me, I have regular consultations with my team of advisors, but my CPA helping me understand the current tax code and ways that I can utilize it within my goals of what I'm trying to do today and into the future. It can be very, very powerful.
Yeah. Awesome.
So we're going to wrap up. Jason, the last portion will take about 2 minutes. What are some financial pearls or life pearls? If it could be something simple, it could be something specific that you want to share with our listeners, something high value. Give us some of your wisdom in that area.
You can always out-earn your lifestyle. I think so many people who are high income earners see that they can afford it. And so their lifestyle increases too quickly for them to ever get some type of domino effect of financial principle and disciplines in motion to start building wealth along the side. I think many in your group, are high income earners, but you could probably dissect the group and say, we have a lot of people who make a lot of money and have very little to show for it in regards to their net worth, their retirement account balances, or just their personal financial statements. And so for me, I feel like focus on net worth more than you're focused on your income. But expanding your means eventually became more of my passion, because I realized as I am able to add more value to the marketplace, my value increases and the value of my time, which allows me to make more and increase my income potential. But it also requires me to still try to keep as much as I can of whatever I earn. And so I see so many people who make 7-figure amounts annually and have very little to show for it. I think if you can learn to implement a financial plan and allocate monies to tax efficient accounts and investments, you'll do very well in your future, so that eventually you can live the life that you hope to live, where you can have life of impact and life of giving and life of contribution. I mean, I think that's what we all seek. We have a different career path on how we're trying to get there, but I think that's what we ultimately want. We're seeking peace and happiness, fulfillment in what we do. And I'd love to see a group like this that has the ability to achieve it, put together an actual plan in place to do that. Taxes are going to be your biggest expense. Your best value of time is going to be your practice. So focusing on your practice, that's where your time should be spent, because that's where you're going to earn the most per hour that you give. Hopefully there's something in that.
I love that, Jason. So a couple of things I think you said earlier that I think to reiterate is starting early, right? Like paying yourself or start investing early, number one. And two, I love that the perspective that you've got on this being about enjoying life and loving it. And I think people who are big savers also can find it hard to enjoy their financial successes, right? And not be able to take the nice vacation or buy the nice thing or struggle with that, right? And so I think realizing that this is a tool for us to enjoy our family and friends in this life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's really what the goal is not just to accumulate it, but to do good things with it, both for ourselves and for others.
I'm a testament to that. I think that's why I'm so passionate. I never thought I'd be living the life that I live today when I started in my early years, in my childhood. And so it's exciting to me to think, wow, this is possible for anyone who's willing to implement this. And it's applied knowledge that matters, not just knowledge. And so many people have, you're a very intelligent group, but many of you maybe struggle applying what you know and putting together a framework that'll help you reach that future person and lifestyle that you hope to obtain.
I want to segue to our outro and just say, I've really appreciated your time, Jason, your thoughts. Brad, it's been great having you on.
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was fun.
You asked some great questions. I think that your personal experience was really valuable, really meaningful. And that's what makes this show so great. I just feel so blessed to be a part of it. Honestly, to me, it's something that I really love doing. And I love the connections we have and the conversations we have. And I hope that we're adding value, to our listeners. So, with that, Jason, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for helping us, understand that wealth is more than just spreadsheets. And it's more than syndications. You've given our listeners a window into how financial strategy can serve deeper life goals, whether that's freedom, family, or just, simply peace of mind. And to our listeners, if you found today's conversation meaningful, please take a moment to give this podcast a 5-star rating and leave a short written review. It always really helps others discover the show and join the community of thoughtful, forward-thinking orthodontists. So please do that. Subscribe if you're not subscribed to our podcast. And if you're looking to connect with others walking the same path, join our private Orthodontic Pearls Facebook group, now with over 9,500 members, orthodontists, sharing wisdom, support, and ideas every day. And for potential sponsors, for those of you who want to reach our audience, email us at orthodonticpearls@gmail.com to request our sponsorship menu. Brad, again, thanks for joining us. Andy,
Thank you.
This is my first attempt at hosting, and you kind of hosted it, sort of. I kind of hosted it. And you know what? You're just damn good at doing the hosting, man.
I think you did great, Brian.
Stay in your lane, but I enjoy doing it, and like I said, I'm a mouth. That's kind of my thing, and I really had a great time, and I do want to say, truly, I appreciate the time. I recognize how meaningful time is, how valuable is, how it's a resource that is hard to come by. I think in our life stage.
And let's not forget Happy Father's Day, right? So
that's true.
That's right. We're recording. This is probably going to be released in about 2 months from now. With what we have. But this is actually Father's Day. My kid's out there with like breakfast, and I'm like, get away from me. I'm recording a podcast, and no, I'm just kidding. Day before Father's Day, we wouldn't be that that crazy.
No.
But Jason, thanks for being on, man. I loved hearing your perspective on everything. I'm really looking forward to some great things from this Pearls Fund, and I hope that we get to work together in the future, because taxes suck. they absolutely suck. And I want to pay as few of them as legally possible. So, yeah, thanks for helping us.
Nice job. Yeah.
Appreciate you guys having me on. Yeah.
Thanks, you guys.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Last year, we were fortunate enough to come as well, but I feel like that really set the bar high. And so then this year, I feel like everybody was super, super excited and thrilled to hear that we were going to be able to attend again. Like I said, the energy of this conference is just so lively. There's so much to do. Every detail is so thoroughly thought through that it's a blast. I was clinical. I kind of transitioned to admin. I feel like in every single lecture, no matter what team you're on, you can take something away from it. But then it's a perfect balance of we're here to learn and then also we're rewarded and get to do fun things. Especially at Collins, we all have really, really close bonds with each other. But I feel like this experience definitely allows us to make those relationships and bonds even stronger because here we get to have fun and really expand on those relationships. Dr. Collins always puts on a great show. At the clinic, we're so used to, our routines there, but it's fun to see him kind of just be able to let loose and just truly have a blast. Last year was USS Midway. This year was the house party at Dr. Teeters' house. And next year is at the U.S. Space Center.
Be sure to log on to orthodonticpearls.org today to see our lineup of speakers and incredible events we have planned for you. We'll be partying under a space shuttle. It will be absolutely incredible with music from the world's only all-orthodontist band, Relapse. If you've seen Relapse before, you should definitely come back again because every show is different, and this show will be out of this world. Register at orthodonticpearls.org today.